Tom was a young man who loved adventures more than anything else. Every weekend he searched for new places to explore, and cliffs were his favorite. He enjoyed the feel of the rough rocks beneath his hands, the cold wind on his face, and the sound of the birds calling in the mountains. This morning the sun was shining brightly over the valley. Tom stood at the bottom of a tall cliff and looked up. The cliff was steep, almost vertical, and the rocks were sharp. Many people in the nearby village said it was too dangerous to climb, but Tom smiled. He loved challenges, and this cliff promised something exciting. Tom carried a backpack with essential supplies. He had ropes, a harness, a water bottle, some sandwiches, and a first aid kit. He also had a small camera to take photos of the view from the top. As he began his climb, he felt the thrill of adrenaline. Each step was careful and deliberate. He pressed his hands into the small cracks in the rock and pushed his legs against the ledges. The higher he climbed, the stronger the wind became. His shirt stuck to his back, but he didn't mind. He had faced tough climbs before, and he was ready for anything. After a while, he noticed something unusual. About halfway up the cliff, there was a small ledge hidden behind thick green vines. The vines moved slightly in the wind, and the stone underneath them looked smooth and worn. Curious, Tom carefully climbed toward the ledge. His fingers touched the vines, and he slowly pulled them aside. Beneath the vines, he saw the roof of a small house carved into the cliff itself. He froze for a moment, unable to believe his eyes. A hidden house? How could something like this exist in such a dangerous place? No one in the village had ever mentioned it, and there were no paths leading to it. Tom's heart began to beat faster. He looked at the small wooden door of the house. It was old but still solid. The hinges looked rusty, and the wood had dark lines from years of weather. Surprisingly, the door was slightly open. It creaked as it moved with the wind. Tom felt a mix of excitement and fear. He had discovered something extraordinary, but he didn't know what he would find inside. After a deep breath, he decided to step in. Curiosity was stronger than caution. The interior of the house was small and narrow. The ceiling was low, and thick wooden beams supported it. Dust covered the floor and furniture, and cobwebs hung from the corners. A small wooden table with 3 chairs sat in the center of the room. The table had scratches and stains as if it had been used many years ago. On the walls, Tom noticed strange carvings and drawings. Some looked like symbols, while others looked like maps. He bent down to examine them more closely, tracing the lines with his fingers. They seemed to tell a story, but he could not understand it. As he walked further, Tom found a narrow staircase leading to a small basement. The steps were dark and worn, and he hesitated for a moment. He could feel a chill coming from below. The air smelled old, like the house had not been opened for decades. But his curiosity pushed him forward. He carefully climbed down the steps, keeping one hand on the wall for balance. The basement was cold and dimly lit by the light coming from the staircase above. It was filled with strange objects. Stacks of old books leaned against each other, their pages yellowed and fragile. Glass jars sat on shelves holding tiny objects that Tom could not identify. Some jars contained stones, others held dried plants, and one even had small figurines carved from wood. Masks with blank, expressionless faces hung on hooks. Tom felt a shiver run through his body, but he could not stop looking. In the corner of the basement, he saw a wooden chest with an iron latch. It looked heavy and ancient. Tom knelt down and tried to open it, using a piece of wood to pry the lid. The chest creaked loudly, but finally gave way. Inside, he found a collection of old letters tied with faded ribbons. There was also a small notebook with a cracked leather cover. Tom picked up one of the letters and began to read. The letters told the story of a family who had lived in the cliff many years ago. They wrote about hiding from the world, living in secret, and keeping their home safe from outsiders. Some letters spoke of daily life, but others mentioned strange experiments and warnings. One letter said, "Do not disturb what is sleeping. It must remain undisturbed." Tom's eyebrows knitted together. What was sleeping? And why had they written this warning? He opened the notebook carefully. The handwriting was shaky and uneven. The pages described many years of strange activities inside the house. Some entries spoke of objects that could move on their own, shadows that appeared at night, and whispers in empty rooms. Tom's stomach tightened. He felt a wave of unease. The house was no longer just a hidden place. It seemed alive in some mysterious way. As he read, Tom heard a faint sound above him. It was a soft creak, like someone walking on the floor above. He froze and held his breath. The sound came again, and it seemed closer this time. Tom looked toward the stairs leading upstairs, but no one was there. His heart began to race. Had he really heard something, or was it his imagination? The air felt heavier, and the shadows in the basement seemed darker. Tom tried to calm himself. He told himself that it was probably just the wind moving the old wood. But deep inside, he could not shake the feeling that he was not alone. Every noise made him jump, and he could feel his hands trembling. He carefully placed the notebook back in the chest and stood up. The basement seemed larger than it did from above, and the walls seemed to stretch in strange ways. Tom's curiosity battled with fear, but he decided to continue exploring. Back on the main floor, the house felt different. The carvings on the walls seemed clearer, almost as if they were watching him. He noticed that the furniture had shifted slightly, though he was sure he had not moved anything. The air was colder now, and every step echoed loudly. Tom realized that the house had a presence of its own. It was silent, but it was aware of him. He walked to the far corner of the main room and discovered another door, this one hidden behind a thick curtain of dust and cobwebs. Tom pushed it aside and found a small room. Inside, there was a mirror leaning against the wall. He wiped the dust from the glass and looked at his reflection. At first, everything seemed normal, but then he noticed something strange. His eyes looked darker than usual, and a shadow seemed to flicker behind him. Tom took a step back and almost dropped his flashlight. His heart pounded. He had the sudden feeling that the notebook's warning was real. Tom stood in the middle of the small room, trying to understand what was happening. The house was quiet, but it felt alive. He remembered the letters and the warnings. The family had hidden something here, something powerful and dangerous. Tom realized that he had crossed a line by entering the house. His curiosity had led him to a place he might not leave easily. He decided to explore one last corner before leaving. There was a small cabinet with drawers, each filled with old trinkets and objects. Some were simple, like buttons and coins, but others were strange. Tiny carved figures stared at him from the shelves, and he felt their eyes follow his movements. Tom felt a shiver, but he could not stop looking. He knew that this house held secrets, secrets that might never be revealed. As the sun began to set outside, Tom knew he had to leave soon. He climbed back to the ledge outside and looked down at the valley below. The view was breathtaking, but he could not enjoy it. His mind was filled with questions about the hidden house and the warnings in the notebook. He packed his backpack carefully, took one last look at the mysterious home, and began his careful descent down the cliff. Though he was climbing down, Tom could not stop thinking about what he had seen. The house was small, hidden and silent, yet it felt alive. The letters, the notebook, the shadows, and the whispers had left a deep impression on him. He realized that some mysteries might be too dangerous to explore, and some curiosities could bring more fear than excitement. As he reached the base of the cliff, he looked back up at the hidden house, wondering if he would ever dare to return. Tom knew one thing for sure. The hidden house in the cliff was a place unlike any other. Its secrets were waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to uncover them, and he had already begun a journey he could never forget. The adventure had only just begun, and the story of the house and its mysteries was far from over. The sun was slowly disappearing behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the valley. Tom walked carefully through the rocky path that led back to the village. His legs were tired and his hands ached from the climb, but his mind was restless. Every thought seemed to return to the hidden house in the cliff. The old wooden door, the strange carvings, the basement with jars and masks, and the notebook with warnings haunted him. He knew he could not stop thinking about it. Something about that house was calling him, and he could not ignore it. When he finally reached the village, the streets were quiet. Most of the villagers had already gone inside their homes. Tom sat on a wooden bench near the fountain in the village square and opened his backpack. He took out the small notebook he had brought from the hidden house. He flipped through the pages, careful not to damage them. The words inside were shaky, as if written by someone under stress or fear, but the meaning was clear. The notebook spoke about the family who had lived in the cliff and about strange happenings inside the house. One page caught his attention. It described a hidden room that the family had called the heart of the house. According to the notebook, the room held objects and knowledge that were very dangerous if touched by the wrong person. The writing warned repeatedly not to enter the room unless necessary. Tom's curiosity surged again. He knew the house held secrets, but something deep inside him told him that these secrets might be darker than he could imagine. The night passed slowly. Tom could not sleep. He kept thinking about the hidden house and its strange presence. He tried to convince himself that he should leave it alone, but he could not. The idea of discovering more, of understanding what had happened in the house, was too strong to resist. By early morning, he had made his decision. He would return to the cliff and explore further. With the first light of dawn, Tom packed his gear again. He carried his ropes, flashlight, water, food, and the notebook. His heart beat with a mix of excitement and fear. He climbed back toward the cliff, moving carefully over the rocks. The path was steep, but he had done it before. As he approached the hidden ledge, he felt his pulse quicken. The house appeared silent and still, just as he had left it. The wooden door seemed to welcome him and warn him at the same time. Tom stepped inside. The air smelled the same as before, old, dusty, and cold. Cobwebs hung from the corners, and the faint light from the windows created strange shadows on the floor. He walked to the staircase leading to the basement. His hands were steady, but his mind was alert. He had learned to respect the house, but he could not ignore his need to explore. Carefully, he descended into the basement once more. Everything was as he had left it. The jars, the books, and the wooden chest were still in their places. The shadows in the corners seemed to watch him, and a soft chill ran down his spine. Tom approached the chest and opened it again. The letters and notebook were exactly as he remembered. He picked up the notebook and turned to the pages about the heart of the house. According to the notebook, the room was hidden behind a false wall in the basement. Tom searched along the walls carefully, touching each wooden panel. Finally, he found one that moved slightly when pressed. He pushed it, and a section of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow passage. Tom's heart raced. He took a deep breath and stepped inside the passage. The air was even colder here, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed from somewhere deep within the house. He moved slowly, careful not to make a sound. The passage led him to a small chamber, dimly lit by a single hole in the wall that allowed sunlight to enter. The room was filled with objects that seemed both ordinary and strange at the same time. There were books with unknown symbols, jars with strange powders, and small wooden figures that appeared almost lifelike. In the center of the room was a pedestal. On it rested a small, round object that looked like a stone but shimmered faintly. Tom approached it slowly. He could feel a strange energy in the air. The notebook had warned him not to touch anything in this room, and now he understood why. The object on the pedestal seemed to pulse slightly, as if alive. Tom's curiosity battled with fear. He wanted to reach out, to touch it and understand its power, but a voice in his mind warned him to step back. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from the passage behind him. Tom froze. The steps were soft, deliberate, and heavy. He spun around, shining his flashlight into the darkness. The passage was empty, but the sound continued, moving closer. His heart pounded, and he felt a shiver run down his spine. He realized he was not alone in the house. Something or someone was with him. Tom took a step back and bumped into a shelf. The jars rattled, and one fell to the floor, breaking into pieces. The sound echoed through the chamber. The footsteps stopped. Silence returned, thick and heavy. Tom breathed slowly, trying to calm himself. He knew he had to stay alert. He could not let fear control him, but he also could not ignore the warning from the notebook. The room held secrets that might be dangerous if disturbed. He decided to explore the room without touching anything. He walked carefully among the shelves, observing the objects. One book lay open on a small table. Its pages were filled with drawings of the family, strange symbols, and sketches of the house. Tom realized that the family had been studying something powerful, something they had not fully understood. They had hidden it to protect it, and the notebook's warnings were meant to prevent others from disturbing it. As Tom studied the book, he noticed a small door at the far side of the room. It was partially hidden behind a curtain of dust. He moved toward it, curious to see what lay beyond. The door was small, and when he opened it, he found a tiny chamber. Inside, there was a low table with more objects, small stones, crystals, and tiny tools made of wood and metal. On the wall, another set of carvings told a story. This time, the story was clearer. It spoke of a family that had lived in isolation, guarding a secret that had the power to change lives. Tom realized that the family had spent generations protecting something extraordinary. The object on the pedestal, the jars, the symbols, and the notebook were all part of a hidden knowledge that the world outside could not understand. He felt a mixture of awe and fear. He had stumbled into a place that few humans had ever seen, and now he understood the responsibility that came with it. Suddenly, the chamber grew colder. The light from the hole in the wall flickered, and the shadows in the room seemed to move on their own. Tom felt a presence as if the house itself was aware of him. He remembered the warning from the notebook. "Do not disturb what is sleeping." The words echoed in his mind, and he realized that the secret the family had guarded was still alive. Even after all these years, Tom's curiosity surged again. He wanted to understand everything, to discover the truth about the hidden house, but fear held him back. He knew that one wrong step could change everything. He decided to leave the small chamber and explore another part of the basement. He needed to understand the house without disturbing its secrets too much. As he moved through the basement, he noticed a small staircase leading even deeper. The steps were narrow and steep, and the air grew colder with each step. He hesitated, knowing that the notebook had not mentioned this part of the house. His heart beat faster, but he could not turn back. The adventure had already begun, and he felt that the deeper he went, the closer he would come to understanding the hidden secrets. At the bottom of the stairs, Tom found a narrow corridor lined with stone walls. The corridor seemed endless, twisting and turning in strange ways. The air was thick, and every sound he made echoed loudly. He moved carefully, feeling the energy of the house around him. The walls seemed to hum, and the shadows flickered with movement. Tom realized that the house was not just a building. It was alive in a way he could not fully comprehend. At the end of the corridor, he saw a faint light. It came from a small room, hidden behind a heavy wooden door. Tom approached it slowly. The door was old, and the handle was cold to the touch. He took a deep breath and pushed it open. Inside, the room was filled with objects unlike anything he had ever seen. Crystals, jars, books, and strange symbols covered every surface. In the center of the room, a large circular stone glowed faintly, pulsing with light. Tom realized that this must be the heart of the house, the source of the power the family had guarded for generations. Tom stepped closer, his mind racing with questions. The room was silent, but he felt the presence of something ancient and powerful. He understood that he had entered a place few humans had ever seen, and that the knowledge here could be dangerous if mishandled. His adventure had led him to the very heart of the hidden house, and now he would need courage, wisdom, and careful thought to survive what was to come. Tom stood frozen at the entrance of the room. The large circular stone in the center glowed faintly, pulsing with light as if it had a heartbeat. The walls were covered in strange symbols that seemed to move in the corner of his eyes. The air was thick, and every breath felt heavy, as if the house itself was aware of his presence. His curiosity battled with fear. He had come this far, and now he could not turn back. Something inside him urged him forward, but another voice warned him to stop. Slowly, Tom stepped into the room. The glow of the stone illuminated the objects around him. Crystals of every color lined the shelves, catching the light and scattering it into tiny rainbows. Books filled with unknown writings and sketches lay stacked neatly. Small jars held powders that shimmered faintly, and delicate tools carved from wood and metal rested on tables. The symbols on the walls pulsed slightly in time with the stone. Tom felt a strange energy, as if the room itself was alive and watching him. He moved closer to the glowing stone. The closer he got, the stronger the sensation became. It was not just light or energy. It felt like the stone had a presence, like it could sense him, like it knew why he was there. Tom took a deep breath and knelt to examine it. Its surface was smooth and warm, almost like living skin. He reached out, hesitating for a moment. The notebook had warned him not to disturb anything, but the stone called to him. Something in him wanted to understand, to touch it and feel its power. Just as his fingers were about to brush the surface, he heard a soft sound behind him. He turned quickly, shining his flashlight toward the corridor. The passage was empty, but the sound repeated, soft footsteps echoing faintly. Tom's heart raced. He was not alone. Someone or something was in the house with him. He had felt it before in the basement and in the small chambers, but now it was closer, more aware of him. He stepped back from the stone and slowly circled the room, trying to stay calm. The shadows moved in ways that did not make sense. Shapes flickered on the walls, forming patterns that looked almost like figures. Tom felt a shiver run down his spine. The house was alive, and it was aware of him. It had tested him, letting him explore, but now it was showing its presence. He thought of the family who had lived here, They had hidden this place for generations, guarding the secrets carefully. They had written warnings in letters and notebooks, hoping no one would disturb what was sleeping. Tom realized the truth of it now. The power in this room was not ordinary. It was something the family had protected, something that could change lives or bring danger. He understood that his curiosity had led him into a place humans were not meant to explore. Suddenly, a soft whisper echoed in the room. It was faint, almost like the wind, but the words were clear. "Do not touch. Do not take." Tom froze, listening carefully. The whisper repeated, coming from different directions. He realized the sound came from the stone itself. The stone was alive, and it was warning him. His mind raced with thoughts of leaving, but the path back seemed distant now. The house was a maze, and the corridors shifted, making it difficult to remember the way he had come. Tom took a step toward the door, but the room seemed to expand. The walls stretched, and the glowing symbols pulsed brighter. He felt a pressure in the air, a weight that pushed against him. It was as if the house wanted him to understand the importance of what he had discovered. He stepped carefully around the stone, studying the objects on the tables. Each crystal, each jar, each book seemed to vibrate slightly, resonating with the energy of the room. He approached a shelf of books and opened one carefully. The pages were filled with diagrams, symbols, and sketches of the glowing stone. Notes in the margins described how the family had tried to contain its power. The stone could sense emotions, thoughts, and intentions. If disturbed, it could create illusions, shadows, and noises to protect itself. Tom realized that many of the strange things he had seen before, the moving shadows, the whispers, the feeling of being watched, had been caused by the stone's reaction to his presence. Tom felt both awe and fear. He had stumbled into a place of great power and responsibility. He could not touch the stone, but he wanted to understand it. He read more pages, learning about the family who had sacrificed their safety to guard this secret. They had lived in isolation, keeping the house hidden and protecting the stone from outsiders. The notebook had been their way of warning anyone who might come, hoping that knowledge alone would prevent danger. As he read, a faint vibration ran through the floor. Tom looked around, trying to locate the source. The stone pulsed brighter with each beat of the vibration. Shadows on the walls flickered, forming shapes that resembled figures walking or reaching out. Tom realized the house was reacting to his emotions. His fear, curiosity, and awe all triggered responses. He knew he needed to stay calm. Panic would only make the house more dangerous. He stepped back from the stone and decided to explore the room further. A small table in the corner held several jars filled with powders that shimmered in the light. Each jar had a tiny label written in a language he could not understand. Some jars glowed faintly as if containing light itself. He realized that the family had used these substances carefully, perhaps to control or communicate with the stone. The objects were tools of knowledge, but dangerous if handled incorrectly. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the room. The small hole in the wall let in a gust that extinguished his flashlight. Tom froze in darkness. The shadows moved faster now, swirling around him. He could feel the presence of the house all around, and the whispers became louder. "Do not touch. Do not take. Leave now." The voice was no longer soft. It filled the room, echoing from every corner. Tom's heart raced. He knew he had pushed too far, and the house was responding. He remembered the notebook. The family had left instructions for emergencies. One page described a ritual to calm the stone and restore balance if disturbed. Tom had studied it briefly before, but now he realized it might be his only chance. He moved quickly to the page in the notebook and read aloud the instructions, speaking clearly and carefully. The words were strange, but they seemed to resonate in the air. The pulsing of the stone slowed slightly, and the shadows on the walls began to fade. Tom's fear remained, but he felt a small sense of control. The house was alive, but it could be reasoned with as long as he respected its power. He stepped back and observed the room quietly. The stone pulsed gently now, like a heartbeat in time with his own. The whispers had stopped, and the shadows no longer moved erratically. Tom realized that he had survived his first true test. The house had tested him, and he had passed, at least for now. He spent the next few hours exploring the room carefully. He studied the jars, the crystals, and the books without touching the glowing stone. He took notes in his own notebook, recording his observations. He understood the importance of restraint. This place was not meant for careless exploration. The house and the stone held power beyond ordinary understanding. Tom knew that one wrong step could bring danger not just to him, but to anyone who might follow. As the sun began to rise outside, casting light into the room, Tom realized it was time to leave. He carefully retraced his steps through the narrow corridor and back up the stairs to the basement. The house seemed calmer now, as if acknowledging his respect. He climbed slowly, taking care not to disturb anything. The glow of the stone faded behind him, but its presence lingered in his mind. He knew the adventure was far from over, and that the house held more secrets than he could uncover in one visit. When Tom finally reached the main floor, he paused to look around. The house was quiet, almost peaceful now. The carvings on the walls seemed less threatening, and the shadows were still. He realized that he had learned an important lesson. Curiosity could lead to discovery, but respect and caution were essential when dealing with unknown forces. He made a promise to himself that he would continue exploring, but always with care and awareness. Tom stepped outside onto the ledge, feeling the cool morning air on his face. The valley below was bathed in golden sunlight. He looked back at the hidden house, its wooden door closed and silent. The adventure had brought him closer to the truth about the family, the stone, and the house itself. He knew he would return, but he also understood that the house had chosen to reveal its secrets only slowly, testing him at every step. As he began his careful descent down the cliff, Tom felt a mixture of excitement, fear, and respect. The hidden house was more than just a building. It was a living mystery, and he had only just begun to understand its power. He could feel the heartbeat of the house in his mind, reminding him that some secrets were ancient, powerful, and not easily tamed. Tom carefully climbed down the cliff, but his mind was still in the hidden house. The glowing stone, the strange symbols, and the whispering voice haunted him. He could not stop thinking about what he had seen. Even though he had left the stone untouched, he knew the house was alive in ways he did not yet understand. It had tested him and he had passed, but he also knew that it might test him again. Some part of him wanted to return immediately, while another part warned him to wait. After reaching the base of the cliff, Tom sat on a flat rock and caught his breath. His arms ached, his fingers were scraped from the climb, and his legs trembled, but he felt alive. He opened his backpack and pulled out the notebook. He reread the pages about the heart of the house. The writing made sense now. The family had lived in isolation for generations to protect the stone and the objects in the house. They had faced tests, traps, and strange phenomena to keep the house's power secret. Tom realized that he had walked into a world beyond ordinary understanding. Over the next few days, Tom could not stop thinking about the house. He returned to the village, but the streets and fields seemed dull compared to the energy and mystery of the hidden home. He talked to himself often, questioning what he had seen. Could he truly return? Could he uncover more secrets without disturbing the balance of the house? The notebook was his guide, but even it had limits. The family had not written everything. Some knowledge had to be discovered by observation and respect. Finally, Tom decided that he could not wait any longer. The desire to explore was too strong. Early one morning before sunrise, he packed his backpack and started the climb again. The cliff was still steep and dangerous, but his hands and legs remembered the path. As he reached the ledge with the hidden house, he paused. The door was closed and silent, as if the house had been waiting for him. A strange feeling of anticipation ran through his body. He opened the door and stepped inside carefully. The house smelled the same, old, dusty, and slightly damp. The main floor was quiet. Tom moved cautiously toward the basement stairs. He remembered the first test, the whispers, the shadows, and the glowing stone. He felt a mixture of excitement and fear. Something deep inside him told him that the house would not allow him to see everything easily. The tests would be harder this time. He descended into the basement slowly. The shadows moved slightly, as if observing him. Tom could feel a pulse in the air, the same energy he had felt when he entered the heart of the house. He walked toward the hidden wall, the one that led to the secret passage and the glowing stone. When he pushed the panel aside, he felt a strange chill, and the passage seemed darker than before. He lit his flashlight and stepped inside, moving carefully. The narrow corridor led him to the chamber where the glowing stone rested. The light from the stone pulsed gently, almost like it was breathing. Tom's heartbeat echoed in his ears. He could feel the stone's presence surrounding him. He remembered the instructions from the notebook and reminded himself to remain calm and cautious. Any mistake here could trigger the house's power in unpredictable ways. He stepped closer to the stone, keeping his distance. The objects around it, the jars, crystals, and books, shimmered faintly in the light. The energy in the room felt stronger than before. Tom realized that the house was aware of his intention to explore further. The stone's pulse increased slightly and the shadows on the walls shifted. They formed patterns, some resembling figures walking, others reaching toward him. He could feel the house testing his courage and respect. Tom turned his attention to the shelves of books and jars. He examined each item carefully, taking notes in his own notebook. He observed how the powders in the jars reacted to his presence, how the crystals seemed to glow brighter when he focused on them, and how the books contained information about the family's methods for controlling the energy of the stone. He understood that every object had a purpose, and that the family had designed the house not only to protect its secrets, but also to teach anyone who entered about responsibility, caution, and respect. As he studied, a soft whisper filled the room. "You may proceed, but do not take." The voice was calm now, not threatening, but it carried authority. Tom realized that the house was communicating with him. It was not merely alive, it was intelligent. It responded to his actions, his thoughts, and his intentions. He took a deep breath and nodded silently. He promised to respect the house and its secrets. Suddenly, a section of the floor vibrated beneath his feet. The pulsing of the stone increased and shadows stretched across the walls. The house was testing him. Tom's hands shook, but he stayed calm. He remembered the instructions in the notebook about emergencies. He recited the words aloud, carefully and clearly, focusing on their meaning. Slowly, the vibrations and shadows began to subside. The room became quiet once more, and the glow of the stone softened to its usual pulse. Tom realized that the house would continue to test him as long as he explored. Each step, each observation, and each interaction with the objects could trigger responses from the house. He had to be alert, patient, and cautious. The experience was not just about discovering secrets, it was about proving that he could handle knowledge, energy, and responsibility. He spent hours exploring the chamber. He studied the small wooden tools, the jars of powders, and the books filled with symbols. He noticed that some jars contained substances that reacted to his touch, glowing briefly or vibrating slightly. Others remained calm, as if waiting for a specific action. Tom understood that the house rewarded careful observation and punished carelessness. He wrote notes about every reaction he observed, learning slowly but steadily. At one point, he noticed a small hatch in the floor of the chamber. It had been hidden beneath a rug of dust and debris. Tom knelt down and examined it. The hatch was old, reinforced with metal and locked with a small mechanism he did not immediately understand. The notebook did not mention this hatch. His curiosity surged, but he reminded himself to be cautious. The house could be testing him again. He decided to study the mechanism before attempting to open it. He observed the hatch for hours, noting how the metal moved, how the lock functioned, and how the shadows in the room changed when he touched it lightly. He realized that the house was observing him as much as he was observing it. Every movement had an effect. Finally, he felt confident that he could unlock it safely. He carefully manipulated the mechanism, and with a soft click, the hatch opened. Inside, he found a narrow stairway leading deeper into the cliff. The air was colder, and the light from the chamber above barely reached the steps. Tom knew that this was another test. He could proceed further, but he also understood the risks. He took a deep breath and began the descent, feeling the pulse of the house guiding him. Each step was deliberate, careful, and slow. At the bottom, he discovered a small underground chamber. It was unlike anything he had seen before. The walls were smooth and carved with intricate symbols that glowed faintly. The floor was covered with sand soft under his feet, and the air felt alive with energy. In the center of the room was a small altar, holding objects that seemed even older and more powerful than those in the chamber above. Tom's mind raced with questions. He realized that he was only beginning to understand the depth of the house's secrets. As he explored the underground chamber, he noticed faint markings on the walls. They depicted scenes of the family guarding the stone, performing rituals, and teaching others who were worthy of knowledge. Tom understood that the house had been designed to test, teach, and protect. It was not simply a building, it was a living system, a guardian of power, and a teacher for those who were willing to respect its rules. Tom felt both awe and fear. The house had chosen to reveal more to him, but it also demanded respect and caution. He knew that every step forward could be a challenge. Every observation could be a test, and every action could trigger the house's response. He took careful notes, studied the symbols, and observed the energy of the objects around him. The adventure was far from over, and he realized that the house had only begun to teach him its secrets. As he prepared to return to the upper chamber, he felt a soft warmth in the underground room. The pulsing of the stone above seemed to reach him here as if guiding him back safely. Tom climbed the narrow stairway, feeling a sense of accomplishment and caution. He understood that the house had tested him, allowed him to learn, and warned him of dangers. The journey had taught him patience, respect, and the importance of careful observation. Tom reached the chamber with the glowing stone once more. It pulsed gently as if acknowledging his success. He knew that the house was alive, intelligent, and protective. He had passed another test, but he also knew that more challenges awaited him. The hidden house was far more than a secret building in the cliff. It was a guardian of ancient knowledge, and he had only begun to understand its purpose. Tom stood in the chamber with the glowing stone, feeling the pulse of the house surrounding him. The light of the stone shimmered softly, casting long, dancing shadows across the walls. He had explored the hidden house deeper than he had ever imagined. Every step, every observation, and every test had taught him something new. He understood the power of the house and the responsibility it demanded. But now, he faced a question that was heavier than any obstacle or test. What should he do next? He thought about the underground chamber, the jars, the crystals, and the books filled with symbols. He remembered the hatch and the narrow stairway leading even deeper into the cliff. Beyond that, the notebook had no instructions. Whatever lay below was unknown, and he could not predict the dangers. The house had guided him safely so far, but it had also shown him that the next step could be perilous. Tom realized he was standing at a choice: to continue, risking unknown dangers, or to leave and carry the knowledge he had gained so far. Tom took a deep breath and studied the glowing stone. Its pulse was steady like a heartbeat. He felt a strange connection, as if the stone could sense his thoughts and intentions. He knew that it would reveal only what he was ready to handle. The lessons of the house were clear. Curiosity and courage must be balanced with respect and caution. Tom knew that rushing forward could lead to disaster, and yet the desire to explore more called to him. He examined the chamber carefully. The objects around him seemed calmer now, almost as if the house had acknowledged his respect and patience. The shadows on the walls moved gently, forming shapes that reminded him of the family who had lived here generations ago. They had guarded this secret with care, testing anyone who entered to ensure that only those who were worthy could learn. Tom understood that he had passed many tests, but the final test might require wisdom rather than bravery. After several moments of careful thought, Tom decided to leave the deeper stairway for another day. He understood that some mysteries were too powerful to explore recklessly. He could return later, prepared with more knowledge and tools, but for now he needed to honor the house's warnings. The glowing stone pulsed gently as if approving his choice. Tom felt a sense of relief and respect. He had learned the most important lesson. The house rewarded patience and understanding, not reckless action. Tom carefully retraced his steps through the hidden passage and back to the basement. The air felt lighter here, and the shadows seemed less threatening. He noticed the jars, books, and crystals, now glowing softly in the light from the staircase above. Every object seemed to watch him, but he understood that this was the house's way of guiding and testing him. He moved slowly, respecting each object and every step. As he climbed the stairs to the main floor, Tom felt the pulse of the house surrounding him. The carvings on the walls seemed calmer, and the faint whispering that had haunted him before had stopped. He realized that the house recognized his respect for its secrets. The journey had taught him that knowledge was valuable, but wisdom and patience were equally important. The lessons of the house had changed him. Reaching the main floor, Tom paused for a moment. He looked around the small rooms, the wooden table, and the dusty chairs. The house had remained silent, observing him, guiding him, and testing him. He felt a deep sense of gratitude. He knew that he had been given a rare opportunity to witness the hidden secrets of a place untouched by time. The adventure had been more than a climb or a discovery. It had been a journey of learning, understanding, and respect. Tom stepped outside onto the ledge. The sun was rising, bathing the valley in golden light. He looked down at the path leading to the village, feeling the cool morning air on his face. The hidden house loomed behind him, silent and mysterious, holding secrets that few would ever see. He knew he had made the right choice by leaving some parts unexplored. The house had its own rhythm, its own intelligence, and he had learned to respect it. As he began the careful descent down the cliff, he thought about the family who had lived here. They had protected the house for generations, facing tests, shadows, and challenges to guard the glowing stone and the objects around it. Tom realized that their work had not been in vain. The house had survived, hidden and powerful, and now it had allowed him to witness a part of its story. He felt a sense of connection, as if he had become part of the house's legacy, even briefly. The climb down was slow and careful. Tom's hands gripped the rough rocks, his feet found small ledges, and his eyes watched every movement. He had learned patience from the house, and now he applied it. The rocks were slippery in some places, but he moved steadily, remembering every lesson he had learned. The cliff seemed less threatening now. He felt a quiet confidence, knowing that he had faced far greater challenges inside the house. Halfway down, Tom stopped on a small ledge to rest. He looked back up at the hidden house. It appeared calm, as if sleeping. The pulsing energy of the glowing stone was no longer visible, but he could feel its presence in his memory. The house had given him knowledge, lessons, and experience, and now it allowed him to leave with understanding and respect. Tom knew that the house would always remain a mystery to him, but that was part of its power. As he reached the bottom of the cliff, Tom felt the tension in his body ease. The village was in the distance, and the sun illuminated the fields and houses below. He walked slowly toward home, reflecting on the adventure. He had discovered a hidden house, explored its secrets, faced its tests, and learned lessons that went beyond courage or curiosity. The house had changed him. It had taught him that some knowledge was too powerful for careless hands, and that respect and patience were the keys to understanding. When Tom finally returned to the village, he felt a sense of accomplishment and wisdom. The villagers greeted him as usual, unaware of the adventure he had just completed. He smiled politely but kept his secret. The hidden house in the cliff would remain a mystery to everyone else. Its secrets were not meant for casual exploration. Tom understood that some places were alive, not in the way humans lived, but in ways that demanded respect, caution, and patience. Over the next days, Tom thought often about the house. He carried the notebook and his notes carefully, studying what he had learned. He planned for future visits, knowing that he would return one day, but only when he was ready. He understood that the house would continue to test him, and that each visit would be a lesson. The adventure was not over, but he had gained wisdom, respect, and understanding that few would ever achieve. One evening, Tom sat on a hill overlooking the cliff. The hidden house was visible in the distance, carved into the rock, silent and mysterious. He remembered the glowing stone, the whispers, the shadows, and the underground chamber. He realized that the house had chosen to reveal only what he was ready to see. The rest would remain hidden, a secret for those who respected it as he had. Tom felt a deep sense of gratitude. The adventure had been dangerous, mysterious, and challenging, but it had also taught him lessons he would carry forever. As the sun set, Tom made a promise to himself. He would return to the hidden house one day, prepared and patient. He would explore further, but always with respect for the secrets it held. The house had taught him that some mysteries were alive, powerful, and beyond ordinary understanding. He would honor that knowledge and continue his journey, wiser, braver, and more careful than before. Tom walked back to his home in the village, feeling the calm of the evening around him. The cliff, the house, and the glowing stone were now part of his story, a story he would remember for the rest of his life. He had faced challenges, discovered secrets, and learned lessons that could not be taught anywhere else. The hidden house had given him more than knowledge. It had given him understanding, patience, and respect. The adventure had ended, but the lessons remained. Tom knew that the hidden house in the cliff would always be a place of mystery, challenge, and power. He had discovered its secrets, faced its tests, and chosen wisely when danger loomed. The house had rewarded his respect, patience, and courage, and he had left with knowledge that few humans would ever experience. Tom's story was complete for now. The hidden house remained, silent and mysterious, holding secrets for those brave enough to discover them. He had faced the unknown, learned its lessons, and survived. As night fell over the valley, Tom smiled quietly, knowing that some adventures were not just about discovery, but about understanding, respect, and the courage to make the right choice. The hidden house had changed him forever, and he would carry its lessons with him for the rest of his life.